Good afternoon and welcome to today's Survivor Circle session. We're glad that you're here. My name is Becky Perkins. I'm the Survivor Support Specialist here at Zero Abuse Project, and we're happy to have you here today from wherever you're joining us from. And I'm super happy to welcome back Dr. Sarah Helms, who's going to be our presenter today, talking about the art of emotion identification, which is something that we all can relate to and definitely benefit from. Um, if you've not joined us before, or even if you have, just a couple of notes about how to participate today. So this video is being live streamed on the Survivor Circle page, but through YouTube. So if you would like to see a larger picture of the screen, you can click on the full screen on YouTube to see the full picture. And please feel free at any point during the presentation and after to submit any questions or comments that you have in the chat box on the Survivor Space page. And we will be happy to answer those and address those as we go along. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Sarah. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Becky. I am going to be talking today about feelings. So before we get started, obviously talking about feelings may bring up feelings that you experience in real time as we're talking about this stuff. Certainly, if you're choosing to participate via the chat, we would just ask that you be aware of where you're at with where you're feeling. If you need to take care of yourself and step back or take a break or something, that's totally fine. To just be mindful of how any comments or questions that you're sharing, may be impacting you, maybe impacting the larger group, just so that we can create a respectful and a safe environment for everyone to participate in whatever way that they feel that they would like to. Also, just so everyone's aware, I am not actively seeing the live comments as they may be coming in. So Becky is going to be kind of hanging out in the background, and she can pop up and chime in if there's stuff I need to respond to in real time to kind of interrupt me. But the basic format's going to be I'll talk for a little bit about this stuff, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions and comments and feedback and discussion. So with that being said, this is just a brief funding acknowledgement regarding the grant funding for the project. And we'll go ahead and get started. So, how are you? How's everybody? This is a question we get asked a million times, right? How are you? Fine. Like the classic response. And maybe conversationally and in social situations, that's maybe the appropriate response, right? How are you? I'm fine. How are you? Good. Just a superficial chit chat kind of a level of response. But this is an important question. How are you? And often, especially in those brief conversational settings, we don't really pause to check in and see, how am I? No, really, how am I? Deep down, what's the feeling? What's going on inside? And this can be hard. It's not something that we're born knowing how to do. It requires a skill set. And so depending on how you grew up, if you grew up in a home where emotions were discussed very frequently, maybe you had some direct coaching from family or friends, maybe you've done reading or self-help work around this, maybe you've been in therapy or worked on some of this, you may have developed a set of skills. Others of us may not have that same set of skills. Growing up in a house where people maybe didn't talk about their feelings very much, or maybe you were even punished or sort of shut down if you tried to talk about how you were feeling, or if you displayed a big emotion, maybe that wasn't allowed. Maybe that wasn't okay in your family. So maybe you learned at a young age to just sort of brush that aside or kind of stuff it down. Maybe you didn't learn a lot of skills around how to really pause and check in and notice and label, how are you? How am I feeling? What's going on inside? So what our goal for today is to really take a look at that and see if there are some tips or tricks or skills out there to get you started on this journey. And I say journey because it really is a lifelong process of learning and examining. It's certainly not something that we're going to master in the next 45 minutes together here. So when you say, how are you feeling when we're talking about physical health, there's a whole host of ways that you can go to a doctor and get some of those questions answered for you, right? If you go into the doctor and you say, I'm not feeling well, or I'm not sure how I'm feeling, but it seems like something's wrong. There's tools. They can use their, their stethoscope or their blood work, or, step on a scale. You can do all of these different things, stick a thermometer in and see what the temperature reading is. And so physicians can get data from us about how we're feeling. And that may not always be a perfect answer, but in a lot of cases, that physical health question can get answered more concretely, right? We've got things and tests and procedures to figure out what's going on inside when it comes to a physical marker. What is my blood work? What is my temperature? What's my blood pressure? Those data points can give us information about our physical health. Obviously, for mental health and for emotions, that's pretty different. If you come in to see me in my therapy office, I do not have a thermometer that I can pop in and say, oh, look, she's feeling sad today. Or, I can't put a cuff on your arm and figure out like, oh gosh, that anger. It doesn't work that way. So we need a different skill set and a different tool set for how to get data about how we're feeling. And first of all, I'm just going to give an analogy that maybe helps to give a visual on feelings, which is ice cream. How are feelings like ice cream? Okay, go with me on this. Ice cream comes in different flavors, right? You've got your strawberry, your chocolate, your vanilla right there. Emotions also come in different flavors: angry, sad, frustrated, excited, right? You've got all these different types. Also, if you go to the ice cream shop, or if you go to your freezer and get some ice cream out of the bin, you can get a big serving of ice cream, or you can just get a little bit of ice cream, right? Feelings are like that too. Maybe you've got just a little bit of frustration, or maybe you've got a big, huge frustration, a big old giant bowl with 15 scoops of ice cream in it. All of those are heaped in there with frustration, right? Scoop after scoop. Sometimes the flavors, they aren't as clear cut, right? So sometimes you go to the ice cream shop and you've got the plain chocolate and the plain vanilla, and it's just very clear what that is. But sometimes you go, you look, and it's got this whole swirl. It's like Rocky Road. It's like, vanilla ice cream base, but it's got a caramel drizzle swirled through it. It's got hunks of chocolate and bits of brownie, and there's some cookie dough melted and folded in it. Like, it's got all this stuff, right? And it's all swirled in there together. As you take a bite of that ice cream at any given moment, you're sort of getting lots of different slices of, there's this and there's this and there's this. They're all kind of swirled in there together. So feelings can be like that too, right? We don't always just experience one flavor at a time. It's not just chocolate and then just vanilla. We might have a whole swirl of feelings inside of us, angry and sad, both at the same time. Sometimes even you can feel scared or angry or sad, or some of the emotions we might label more as sort of unpleasant or negative emotions, at the same time that you're also feeling joy and excitement. If you think about a big change in your life, maybe you're moving to a new job, or buying a new home, or moving to a new city. Those big changes can bring a whole mix of feelings, right? You're feeling nervous about trying something new. You're feeling sad about leaving old stuff behind. You're feeling excited about the new stuff that's coming, right? So that's like that Rocky Road swirly, ice cream with all these different toppings and things all mixed in. Those feelings can get real swirled around too. Sometimes those feelings can be hard to separate out. Right? Just like if you have a bite of that ice cream, that's the swirly kind of ice cream, you can't always just pick apart and say, well, that was the vanilla bite, and oh, that's the caramel bite. It's all swirled in at the same time, right? And that makes it a lot harder to identify and to label sometimes. It can also lead to situations where we sort of dismiss parts of it. We just sort of choose to focus on, okay, I'm just going to focus on this hunk of brownie bite that's swirled into this ice cream, because I can't focus on all of the flavors all at the same time. And feelings can be like that too. You might sort of hone in on the sadness, or hone in on the anger, or hone in on the excitement, because it's hard to hold all 3 of those, or 4 of those, or 20 of those all at the same time. Right. And so that's natural. That's normal. That's part of emotions. I say that just to say, as we're thinking about feelings, or if you're starting this journey of learning how to identify, what am I really feeling? be aware of that. Pause and check in and go, okay, is this just a basic chocolate vanilla kind of feeling I'm having right now? Or might this be the rocky road swirled up, lots of feelings all mixed in together? Might that be happening? And just try to notice that. Try to see, can you pick apart the different pieces that are all swirled in there together at the same time? And as I said, right, I don't have a thermometer that I can just stick in and give a reading when you come to see me in my therapy office. But another tool that you can use with feelings and learning how to start this process of identifying your feelings or your emotions is to think in terms of a feeling thermometer. To think, okay, I've gone through this first step, the ice cream step. I've identified the chocolate flavor, right? I've identified the anxiety, or I've identified the sadness. Okay, I'm going to focus on that sadness right now. That's the flavor of ice cream. That's the flavor of emotion that I'm getting is sadness. Well, how big is that? So if you imagine some numbers on that thermometer going from 0 to 10 or from 0 to 100, is it just a little tiny sad? Is it like a 2 or a 3? Or is it a real big sad? Is it like a 10 out of 10? You're maxing out that feelings thermometer. Especially when people are new to this process of trying to identify and label their emotions. It's very common that people don't really notice their feelings when that thermometer reading is low. Of course, most of us are going to start to notice stuff when it's up there at the maximum amount. If I'm angry at a 10, I'm probably going to know I'm angry at a 10 because I'm like spewing, right? I'm at max intensity. But learning that skill of noticing the feeling when it's a little lower on the thermometer can take practice, right? So how do I notice when that angry is at a 1 or a 2 and maybe catch it sooner and maybe do stuff to manage the feeling or to address the feeling before I allow it to escalate all the way up to a 10 when I'm just, a volcano erupting, right? That's a skill in emotion identification, is learning how to notice it, identify it, and catch it when it's smaller. Rather than waiting until you've kind of maxed it out. Maybe you've been bottling it up and holding it in, and it's just building and building, and now I'm at a 10. So that's what we want to avoid when it comes to feelings. Just starting to label emotions. This is a set of happy, sad, angry, surprised, scared, and disgusted balloon faces. And there's lots of other feelings charts out there. So if you Google or do a Google image search for emotions or emotion identification, there's lots of different charts and visual aids with lots of different types of faces to kind of start matching together. What does this look like with what does this feel like? These are the core emotions. And this core set is one that is a great place to start with starting to name and identify what am I feeling and to hone in on some specific words. And that may sound simple because these are some sort of simple vocabulary words, right? Happy, sad. As you get more advanced in this skill, you may start expanding that vocabulary to get even more and more nuanced and specific. And we'll talk about some tools for that in a minute. But these core emotions are ones that you may start with as the first building block to figure out how do I catch what some of these core emotions are that I'm feeling, and how do I put a word to it. If you have trouble with this, you're not alone. Lots of people have trouble with this. There's actually a word in mental health, the word alexithymia, a big long word, that basically means people who struggle to notice what it feels like in their body with different feelings and sensations, and also have trouble labeling what those feelings and sensations are. So maybe starting with a shorter list, like this list of some core emotions, could be a place to start, rather than trying to get very detailed at the very beginning of your journey with this. There are also feelings wheels, and this is an example of one. There are lots available online that take those core emotions at the center of your wheel and then radiate out from there into more and more specific language. So you might start off by saying, okay, well, I'm feeling angry. I can identify that core feeling. I'm not exactly sure the nuance or the more advanced vocabulary about it, but I think what I'm feeling right now is on the anger spectrum of emotions. So going to a wheel like this and starting at the angry on the inner part of that circle, then working your way out to look at more and more specific descriptors of that feeling. So am I feeling frustrated? Am I feeling infuriated? Am I feeling aggressive? Am I feeling defiant? So you can kind of take that umbrella, that sort of core emotion word of anger, and then try to get more and more specific about what exactly is it that I'm feeling. Can I label it more specifically? This is another example of a feelings wheel. One thing I like about this wheel is that it takes those core feelings, branching out into more specific words, but it sort of splits the wheel as you start at the top and move to the left versus moving to the right. Feelings that you're more likely to experience when your needs are being met. Those are the feelings that most people would label as being more positive in valence, being happy, feeling joyful, feeling comfortable, feeling confident. Things that come when your needs are getting met that fall on that end of the scale. On the other side of the wheel, if you're starting at the top and moving to the left, these are the feelings that you experience when your needs are not being met as effectively. So feeling sad or angry, feeling frustrated or disappointed. Some of those feelings where people might label those more as unpleasant feelings, negative feelings. I'm saying that cautiously because there's no bad feeling. There's no wrong feeling. We might not enjoy feeling sad as much as we enjoy feeling happy. But there's no wrong feelings. There's no bad feelings. So I tread lightly there because I don't want to give the impression of saying, well, these are bad feelings and these are good feelings. The reality is that as humans, we're going to experience all the feelings at various points and under various conditions. We don't want to push that away. We don't want to ignore it or negate it. We don't want to make it seem like, oh, well, those are bad feelings, so I'm going to try to stuff that away or not do it. Sometimes part of the journey is learning how to lean into the feeling, how to experience the feeling, and just be present in it. So all of that to say, these different feelings wheels can be used in different ways. And I think this one, looking at this idea of are my needs getting met or not, presents an interesting lens for us when we start to think about linking up, well, how am I feeling with what's going on around me in my environment? What are my behaviors? What are other people's behaviors that are being directed towards me or not? What am I thinking? What are the thoughts that are going on and how are those factoring into all of these feelings and what's going on for me? So using that framework can be an interesting one. It also leads to these other types of wheels. So this is a needs wheel, right? So we've left the feelings and now we're going to start focusing on needs. This lines up with the feelings wheel that I just demonstrated, but there are also other types of needs wheels. Here's another one that's a little smaller and more simplified. So on the emotions wheels, usually we start on the inside with those core emotions that are a little more basic to identify, like sad or mad. And then from there, we branch outward on the circle to get more specifics. On the needs wheel, you certainly could do that. That's not wrong. But the needs wheels, often we start on the outside and then work our way in. So saying, am I in a situation right now where I'm really feeling a need for connection with someone? Am I really feeling the need to isolate or withdraw from people? Am I feeling the need to do something fun and playful? Do I feel the need to control this situation? Do I feel a need for more privacy, or do I feel a need for exerting power over a situation? So finding those needs on the outer portion of the wheel and then sort of drilling in to say, okay, what is this about? Is this about really at its core, this is I'm expressing a need for safety, or I am feeling a need for connection and relationship. So these are another interesting way to sort of layer on there with emotions and identifying what it is that you're feeling in any given moment. Another tool that you may be interested in trying out is called a mood meter. And I've put the sort of screenshot in the App Store. I have Apple products. So that's what it looks like in the Apple App Store, the mood meter. You can download this app for $1, and it's actually a really cool tool. You don't have to have the app to do it, but if you want to track your moods or your feelings over time, this app will give you the ability to do that and to track that, and then go back and look through how your moods shift or change day to day or minute to minute as you're kind of tracking things. So the mood meter fundamentally asks, okay, how are you feeling on sort of a two-pronged approach. So going across side to side is this idea of, is this feeling I'm experiencing pleasant or unpleasant? Now this goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Like there's no bad feelings, but feeling joyful certainly is experienced by most people as being more pleasant than feeling angry, for example, right? So on that pleasantness from left to right, as we're moving towards the positive 1, 2, 3, 4 side of that grid, we're moving towards more and more pleasant feelings. In the middle, right there where it crosses, where the 4 colors kind of come together in the middle, would be sort of neutral. It's not pleasant, it's not unpleasant, right? And then moving towards the negative 1, 2, 3, 4 on the left side, so towards the red and the blue part of the scale, that's moving towards things that are less pleasant. The other axis of this diagram is energy level. So going up and down, higher energy would be moving up the scale towards the positive numbers. Lower energy would move down the scale, so towards the negatives. So from that process, you can sort of move yourself into a quadrant of saying, well, what I'm feeling right now is very pleasant and it's pretty high energy. So you're going to be up there in that yellow area of the grid. Or what I'm feeling is very pleasant, but it's very low energy, right? So that's going to be moving down into the green. If you're saying what I'm feeling is not very pleasant, I'm not enjoying this. This is an unpleasant sensation I'm having in my body, moving towards the left. So unpleasant but high energy would be up in the red. Unpleasant but low energy would be down in the blue. This is a great tool, especially if you have trouble putting words to your feelings. This is a great tool to start that process of saying, I'm just going to sort of figure out, is it pleasant or not? And is it high energy or is it low energy? Once you sort of map that out on the grid, and if you're doing this in the app, you can sort of like enter and click into where you're feeling on those 4 colors. You're then going to be given an opportunity from the app, or if you're doing this, manually with just a printout like this, to hone in more specifically. So a pleasant, low energy state might be feeling calm or relaxed. A pleasant, high energy state up towards the yellow might be, feeling excited, feeling happy about something. An unpleasant, high energy experience might be some intense anxiety or anger. An unpleasant, low energy experience might be feeling sad or down. So as you sort of hone in on those four quadrants of the mood meter, it's going to help to supply you with words to an experience that you may be struggling to label with a vocabulary, but that you can sense in your body. You can sort of feel the pleasantness, or you can sort of feel the energy, and it will then hone in. The cool thing on the app is it will, as you hone in on those very specifics, like, +5, +4, wherever you go on the grid, you can actually track that and save that data in your app. So that's just kind of a cool add-on about that. So I've shown you a few tools today. There's certainly lots more out there. Why does it matter, right? Like, let's kind of like boil it down. Why does it even matter? Figuring out what you're feeling is a really important first step to figuring out how to get to where you want to be. If you're struggling with feelings and they're just getting bottled up and stuffed down, you may be living in ways that don't align with your goals or your values, because those emotions are not being processed or not being managed in the way that you would like to. It's certainly not necessary to label an emotion in order to change it, right? Like, I might not know what I'm feeling. I might not be able to put a word to it, but I know, if I go out and get some fresh air, I'm going to feel better. Or if I, call a friend and get some support, I'm going to feel better. That's okay. So it's certainly not to say that labeling that feeling is a required first step. But for a lot of us, practicing this art of hitting pause, looking inward, identifying what am I feeling? Where am I feeling it in my body? Even if I can't put an emotion label to it, I might be able to notice in my stomach or in my chest or in my arms or in my head, sort of start to, that process of honing in on where am I feeling this? What kind of label could I put to describe how that feels in my stomach or in my head, right? That process can really help with moving forward on this journey of knowing yourself, of understanding what's going on inside of you, how you're feeling, and then using that information, obviously, to give you more power to change how you're feeling, if that's what you choose, to lean in and deeply experience your feelings. It's part of the human experience to learn how to see it and feel it and name it and be in it. Even if it's not something that you're wanting to change, but it's just something you're wanting to feel. It's a really important tool. So I'm going to pause there and check in. I'm happy to take any questions about the content I've shared or any discussion from the audience if anyone would like to kind of contribute.
Thank you, Sarah. We did have a couple of comments. First of all, I love your ice cream analogy. My goodness, it's great. I will second that. Whomever contributed that, I love the analogy too. I love ice cream, so it made total sense. Thank you for that. Another comment, I so agree that there being no wrong feeling. I was definitely told certain feelings were bad growing up. I think that's true. Probably
that's
true for
huge. That's such a common experience. And I think really what children are being told when they're told that is, I, as the adult, don't want to manage the way that your emotion is impacting me. I don't want to deal with your behavior. I don't want to deal with my own emotions, right, that are being brought to the surface as a result of this interaction. And so I need you as the child to shut it down because I, as the adult, am not really in a position to manage it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, what that does is it sets us up as children to move throughout our development into adolescence, into our adulthood, without the skill set for how to navigate what is fundamentally one of the most human experiences, which is to have emotional reactions and experiences in our life. So I think that's very common, and it's true for many of us.
Yes, and that person agrees exactly. The adult doesn't want to feel their own feelings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And not to vilify that person, whoever that person may be, right? Like they may have also grown up under a system where they did not learn this stuff. They didn't get the skill set for how to manage their feelings. They may not even be aware of what they're feeling. But it really does take some conscious effort, I think, to be that person who's the cycle breaker, right? To say, I maybe didn't grow up in a home where this was modeled, or I didn't learn this the way I would have preferred, but here I am now, and I'm going to take these steps to start addressing it and start learning it now. Whether you're 7 or 70, it's not too late to learn this stuff.
Absolutely. And I think layered in with all of that are kind of the gender, norms that go along with like the socialization of emotion and how, we're expected to express them. Boys socialized not to experience or show vulnerability, or maybe even sadness. Girls, socialized not to, exhibit or experience anger or, assertiveness, which gets mislabeled as aggression.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just we struggle with our feelings from the start, for sure.
Yeah. I would also just, I think, add to that, especially because this is for a community of survivors. Sometimes that was also something that may have been weaponized. So it's not always adults who don't want to feel feelings. It may also be adults who want to use the power that comes along with that, right? So if I can force you to not display emotions or to not communicate about your emotions, then I may be in a position to be in power and control over you. So I think that's just an important piece to also add for this community specifically, is to understand ways that this may have been weaponized intentionally, and potentially as part of an abuse cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. There were a couple of other comments. To know oneself is so precious, and that is true.
Yeah.
Just to have that self-awareness is so important. And then just some kind of synonyms for, high energy, creative, charged. I think it's great being able to have those terms to express, emotions in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I especially with the mood meter, where you can kind of drill down and move your way around and kind of get more specific on the labels, and then the wheels where you sort of can move your way out. I love that. Maybe I'm just a psychology nerd or something, but like, I love that. I think it's so cool to sit there and be like, okay, so am I feeling frustrated, or am I feeling, and to sort of like to really use the labels to reflect in, to use the power of that vocabulary, because feelings are very physical for most of us, right? Feelings are things that are going on in our bodies. And again, I say for this community specifically, as survivors who that mind and body connection is really important to foster in as part of the healing process, and to reconnect. So to be able to then put words and use that vocabulary to sort of toggle back and forth between what am I feeling physically in my body, what can I then move up into my headspace about it to put words and vocabulary and labels, how can I then take those words to parse out and get real specific and drill back down into, okay, well, am I feeling this or am I feeling that? How would I separate those out? How would I label what this feeling is in my body versus that feeling? And how would I know when it crosses from this point to that point, and some of these that are more of a continuum? So I just, again, maybe I'm a psychology nerd, but I think that stuff is really cool, and it's really powerful when you start practicing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can remember if y'all will forgive my little dalliance into pop culture here. I could remember watching the movie Frozen with my daughter, and one of the characters in a song is trying to express how she's feeling, and she says, I don't know whether I'm nervous or gassy, but I'm somewhere in that zone. And I relate to that so well.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. Disney is great for some of that stuff. Also, when we go back to those core emotions, some of the visuals that they gave us from Disney and from Pixar, where you see like the little angry guy who's like red and he's like a volcano blowing up, the Inside Out movie, Joy, or you get to know these characters. That's a really cool connection. I think, again, even as adults, we can benefit from some of these more childlike interpretations. I mean, the ice cream analogy, the balloons with the faces, like, it can feel a little bit silly maybe, but it's really not. It's really a helpful tool to take a very complicated concept and make it user friendly, I guess, for those of us who are trying to do the work. It's hard. It's hard work. So having something that can make it a little more concrete, and to kind of pin onto that, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. We had a comment. I remember the first time my therapist years ago asked her usual question, and how are you feeling? And I actually had an answer. It took a long time for me to even think about my feelings, let alone know how to label them.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for trauma survivors, the luxury of taking some time to actually connect that, with what am I feeling, to really look inward. That may be something that's very new for people who have been living in survival mode of just trying to get through the day, the minute, the hour. This is not something that maybe you've had practice with. That those first few times of actually having someone who genuinely cares to know and who wants to discuss with you, and that you have the time and the space to share and to look inward and to share outwardly, that's very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And kind of as you alluded to at the beginning, we're so programmed to answer that question, how are you feeling, by saying, I'm all right.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you expound on it with more detail about how you really actually are feeling, we're just so programmed to say, okay, or all right, or not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to break out of that and to be honest.
Yeah, right. And, obviously there are some people with whom we should not be honest. There are some people with whom we
Right.
should just, keep it moving, keep it light, right? Like, this is not a trusted person. This is not
Right.
the time or the space. So, obviously there's some protective factors there, but absolutely there are people in our lives where if you're able to share your emotions with them and they're able to receive that and share back with you, that can be a really powerful experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We still have a minute, so if there are any other questions or comments folks want to ask.
Yeah. Also, if there are any other really cool tools out there that other people are using, honestly, even just doing a Google search for emotion identification, emotion regulation. If you go on Google Images or go on Pinterest, there are so many cool therapy tools out there that have been invented by probably way cooler, more tech savvy therapists than me, who can give you lots of cool, keep sampling until you find the one that clicks. Because it might be that for some people, the ice cream analogy of mine makes sense. And for some people, they're just like, this isn't it. But then they dig down on some other Pinterest board and they find, oh, this image really connects to what my experience of emotions is like. So there's no wrong way to do it, for sure. And there's a lot out there.
Yeah. Sarah, from your perspective as a therapist, do you find that it's easier or more difficult, or maybe it's depends on the individual, in a face-to-face environment? I think we feed so much off of other people's body language and how they respond to what we're saying. Do you find that in a face-to-face format, it's easier for people to express the way they're feeling, or do you feel like sometimes it can be more intimidating that way?
I think it varies person to person and situation to situation, for sure. Sometimes that face-to-face eye contact in an enclosed room, like that can start to amp up people's like fight or flight system a little bit. People can get kind of triggered by that and feel less safe. I think also there's probably some age differences. So for someone of my age who didn't grow up with video chats and text messaging and all that stuff, sometimes that can kind of impact people feeling more safe or comfortable with a texting conversation than a face-to-face conversation, because that's just what their natural modality is, I guess. Like, that's kind of what they're comfortable and used to, versus for me, maybe feeling like some of those big, important, heavy conversations I would rather have verbally. So I think that can certainly vary. Even just being comfortable to share with the other person, like, this is feeling really intense for me, I want to take a break, or finding opportunities. Maybe I know sometimes with like with kids, they may want to have some of those big, heavy conversations at night because they're laying in bed and it's dark and it feels safer, and you don't have that eye contact necessarily. It feels more comfortable. Or for teenagers, like you're driving in a car and you're not having, again, that face-to-face eye contact, like they can kind of like look out the window and drop a comment, and it's maybe lowers the intensity for them. So I think knowing your audience maybe is an important part of that, and knowing yourself and what you feel comfortable handling.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. We had a comment. I like the book Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg.
Yes.
Sounds like a good resource.
Yes. And that framework, so the emotions wheel and the needs wheel and stuff, some of that is coming out of that work as well. So that's an awesome connection for sure.
Yeah, that's great. We'll still have a few minutes here if folks have other questions or comments or recommendations? It really is such great information. I mean, definitely for survivors, but even, for anyone, whether they're a survivor or not, just to be able to, identify emotions, how they're showing up in your body and in your life, and be able to kind of label them. It's really, really an important skill to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it really does translate, as you said, this is not survivor specific. This is just humans, right? This is just, we all are going to experience strong emotions. We all are going to have trouble identifying them sometimes. We all are going to end up in situations where our behaviors were influenced or dictated by some emotional reactions we were having. And then after the fact, we look back and we're like, oh, what was that about? Like, if you've ever had a big reaction to something and then you look back and you're like, that's kind of came out of nowhere. It probably didn't come out of nowhere. It probably came out of an emotional thing that was going on for us that we maybe weren't honed in on or tuned into exactly. And that skill of learning to notice it, as I said, before you reach that level 100 breaking point, to sort of see, I see I'm here and I see I'm escalating. I want to catch it here before I'm up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of that skill set can definitely impact that reaction stuff that can come up where you're triggered and you react in a moment, and then later you look back on it like, oh, what was that? Well, catching that emotion and identifying it sooner can help to make that connection between what am I feeling and what am I doing.
Yeah, absolutely. We had another comment. I love it when my kids who are older kids tell their father not to argue with them about their feelings. Quote, they are what they are, and I'm not going to control them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just that willingness to feel the feelings is a huge emotion regulation strategy. So when I say emotion regulation, I think that can get some shade because people are sort of like, well, you can't just control the emotions, or you're trying to force the emotions to do what you want them to do. A huge part of managing your feelings is not forcibly controlling and changing the feeling. It's seeing it, naming it, allowing it to be what it is, being mindfully attuned to how it's playing out in your body, in your experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love that comment from who's ever older kids that have that insight to say that, like, it is what it is, right? The feeling is what it is. So let's just let it be what it is.
Yeah, and a follow-up comment that perfectly echoes that. I love the maxim, you can't control what you are feeling, but you can control what you do about it. In other words, your behavior.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, I know we're coming towards the end of our time together. We will leave the chat box open for a little while. If folks want to continue the conversation, you're welcome to do that. You're also welcome to hop over to the Survivor Forum on the Survivor Space site to continue the conversation anytime, not just during a Survivor Circle session. So you're welcome to do that as well. On the page for today's Survivor Circle session, under the description, there's a link to complete a really quick feedback survey about today's session. And I will plop that into the chat as well when we're done. But we would love if you could just take a moment to provide some feedback, which includes the feedback survey includes any suggestions you might have for future topics. We would love to hear that. But Sarah, thank you so much for your presentation and for your time, and thank you to those who have contributed to the conversation today. This session will be repeated on Thursday at 5 p.m. You're welcome to join us again if you would like to hear the presentation again, or if you know of anyone who would be interested, please help us to spread the word. It's great great information that we want to share with as many people as possible. So thank you all for joining us today. We're so glad you were here, and we hope you have a great afternoon or evening. Thanks so much.
Thanks, y'all.